The Stalker franchise has been among modern gaming's more popular success stories. GSC Game World's take on a dangerous anomaly that threatened to tear apart the very fabric of reality came with a lot of existential dread, backed up by a solid cast of characters and riveting narratives. It was a balance that set up Stalker Call of Pripyat for success way back in 2009. That success soon led to the announcement of Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl in 2012. Things didn't exactly go according to plan, however, and the game has seen an interesting journey from languishing in development hell to surviving a real-world war and a switch in the engine being used for its development until its eventual release in November 2024 after multiple delays. GSC's commendable determination to bring the game to life notwithstanding, Stalker 2 suffered quite a few hiccups after its initial release. The A-Life system that was at the heart of its newly expanded zone did not work as the studio actually intended, while poor enemy AI and lackluster performance were perceived as a poor response to the loyalty that the franchise's fans had shown over multiple delays to its release. Not quite broken, not yet complete. However, for players who chose to stick around in the zone and try to experience its dangers, quirks, and all, Stalker 2 turned to be a pretty solid game, bringing mystery, intrigue, and plenty of terrifying moments with a consistency that similar experiences in the horror survival genre might not be able to match, a sentiment we reflected in our very own review of the game. GSC Game World's resilience has allowed it to emulate its protagonists, with the studio bringing in numerous fixes and patches that have allowed Stalker 2 to become an experience that is quite easy to recommend. In what can only be described as a marvelous comeback from the studio, Stalker 2 has been gradually evolving into a game that surpasses its original vision in many ways. And with GSC Game World's commitment to further honing the experience it offers, Stalker 2 could very well be a beast that its rivals may find quite hard to take down by the end of 2025. Patching up with players and their problems. There have been no less than 17 patches for Stalker 2 in the months since its release, both major and minor, addressing a plethora of complaints from across the gaming community, while making additions that improve an already solid experience. The first two major patches that arrived in late November last year brought fixes to a very long list of problems in the game's release build. AI improvements, further optimizations of story progression, crashes, performance, balancing, and graphical hiccups, a really long list that marked the beginning of Stalker 2's rise to glory that would unfold over the next few months. Now, as far as post-release updates go, Stalker 2's first patches were stellar efforts, considering the time that had lapsed between the game's launch and its release. They showcased GSC Game World's commitment to bringing its ambitions for the game to life, while remaining determined about giving its players the experience that they waited so long to dive into. 2025 and beyond. GSC rang in the new year with a minor patch that addressed a few more player complaints, with the promise of more to come in subsequent releases. That promise led to patch 1.2, bringing a massive list of over 1,700 improvements to the game that included, but certainly weren't limited to, further AI improvements geared towards improving NPC and enemy behavior, improvements to the very crucial stealth experience, further improvements to A-Life, a very long list of fixes to the main story and side missions, and tweaks to the world itself. For a game whose premise was built around the existence of anomalies, GSC demonstrated its ability to remove ones that marred the experience it wanted to offer with precision and efficiency. The new changes were a vast improvement to the overall experience on offer in Stalker 2, making its gameplay loop better reflect a sense of danger at every turn as players explored the zone, while GSC's improvements to NPC behavior and story progression made the experience more seamless as a result. They brought a balance between exploration and the main campaign that was sorely lacking in the release build, allowing players to truly dive into everything the game had to offer. However, the A-Life system still had a long way to go before it became what it was originally intended to be. March 2025 began a transformation that showcased the studio's ability to not just fix existing problems, but make changes to already well-functioning areas to make its flagship title a true masterpiece by modern gaming standards. Along with a very long list of further tweaks that address problems in the game, Stalker 2's true potential began to be teased out in patch 1.3, with changes to how mutant enemies moved in combat, NPC reactions to the player's movements, enemy responses to the player's stealth tactics, balancing changes that brought out further utility from items in the player's inventory, new death screens that match the cause of those deaths, new music and animations that added to the experience, and even the option to remap the melee attack button from the control settings. May 2025 brought patch 1.4 and major improvements to the game's combat overall. Mutants were given an alert state in response to players or NPC actions, while the NPCs themselves began to make more effective use of cover when they were involved in shootouts, even using the trees in outdoor battles in order to be more effective at dealing with threats. These changes worked well with improvements to the game's lighting and shadows, and served to further accentuate improvements in story progression and some other technical fixes. And yet, GSC was still not done. With these two patches, the mutants became even deadlier than they were in previous versions, while human NPCs finally began displaying a modicum of strategy that better reflected how they might have faced down the player in the real world. The immersion began to blur the line between a video game and the real world, and Stalker 2's players were likely to forgive its messy release build. However, GSC seems determined to ensure that its original mistakes were not just forgiven, but forgotten. It went to work once again, and the results are now there for the world to see. Patch 1.5 is currently the latest major update to the game, adding a more comprehensive A-Life system that encompasses the zone in its entirety instead of only affecting entities that are in the player's field of view. It's a change that has transformed the level of immersion on offer in Stalker 2, coupled with new anomaly types, new weapons, lootable mutant parts, and of course the Zone Kit, which brings official modding support to the game. It's now safe to say that Stalker 2 is an experience that builds on the franchise's best traits, while adding a new twist to its gameplay loop that feel like an evolution of its mechanics. Stalker 2 has certainly come a long way from a solid, if flawed, experience in November 2024 to a title that takes the fight to the best survival horror games out there, a feat that GSC alone cannot be credited for. A new kind of fan following. GSC's dedicated community of Stalker fans are as important to Heart of Chernobyl's success as the studio that created it. While their wait for the new game is already legendary at this point in time, their patience and support has allowed GSC to truly let its creation evolve in the months since its release. What's more, the player community has been a constant source of feedback and support for the developers, allowing the studio to make changes to Stalker 2 that have allowed it to realize a dream that began several and more than that years ago at this point. A cursory look at reviews on platforms like Steam showcases a lot of positive reception to its many patches, with the underlying sentiment that they have made it a game that is very immersive overall and thrilling being a common highlight. It's clear that GSC's efforts have really paid off, and will potentially continue to do so as it makes further improvements and refinements to its magnum opus. The build of Stalker 2 that we originally reviewed was already an excellent Stalker title, bringing the franchise's trademarks, chills, and thrills to the table as long as its players were ready to overlook its flaws. Those flaws are now largely just a thing of the past, and Stalker 2 could be entering cult classic territory if GSC continues to release patches and updates at the breakneck pace it currently maintains. It's truly a comeback story that may not be as grand as a few others in gaming history, but it is one that is perhaps the most rewarding, building trust and a mutually beneficial bond between a dedicated studio and its loyal fans. And that, in and of itself, is quite the achievement in today's gaming industry, in which audiences can be rightfully punishing towards a faulty release of a highly anticipated title. Stalker 2 is not one of those games, and for that, we're honestly super delighted. And with the game making its way to the PS5 later this year, it has the potential to impress an even greater number of players if GSC manages a successful port. Now, excuse us while we dive back into the zone and hunt a few more mutants. So, what are your thoughts on this? Go ahead and share them in the comments below. And if you like this video, please subscribe to the channel and enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon to get new video updates. We upload every day and would really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching.